Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Modern Investing on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today guests are Dr. Milan Somberg. Welcome to the show, Milan.
Thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here.
It's always my pleasure. And Jim Eat from Eat Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you for having me, Sasha. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
So today is a great day in Canada. The Bank of Canada lowered interest rates only a quarter of a point, but still, it's kind of probably a beginning in the right direction, and the
Absolutely.
further cuts quite possible. It depends on the data and many other things, but still, maybe that is example for United States. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I think that the Fed has kept the interest rates artificially high for far too long, and they're thinking in the old way of thinking about inflation and how to combat it. When this period of inflation was caused by a global pandemic, not an overheated economy, so the old ways of dealing with it are to be discarded, and it's time to low. The Fed kept the interest rates too low for too long uh, during the previous administration, and now they're keeping them too high for too long. I think I've also been reading that central banks in Europe are going to start to consider cuts as well. It's time to bring down the rates. It's time to allow people to borrow money to start companies that can compete with the prices that are being charged right now. That's the way to bring prices down.
Hmm. Okay, Milan, what do you feel about Bank of Canada action?
Well, house prices are starting to come up as a result of that in Canada. House prices now are a little higher than they were recently. So that's interesting, really, and might set an example for other central banks. But what I found really interesting today is the Wall Street Journal reported that in the last quarter of the last year, Americans have saved more money than ever before. There's more money sitting in various wealth assets than ever before. And so the question now is, what will they do with that money? Most investors don't equal the market. Equaling the market is an easy thing to do, but most investors trail the market, and they will continue to do so if they continue behaving the way that they have in the past. And we show them how to equal the market, which is a very simple thing to do. Here, I'll tell the viewers right now, buy shares in an exchange traded fund which tracks the S&P 500. And the best of those is SPY because it's the oldest, the largest, it has the yeah, that's the
The most volume. Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing to buy. So it's a very simple thing to do. You can teach a high school student how to do that in a matter of minutes, and less than that. So how will investors put this money to use now that they have more than they have ever had before?
And I want to do a little shout out to the Gen Zers because they are the ones that are saving more than people have in the past, and they're saving. They want to retire early, and so they don't trust any government like Social Security or anything like that. So they're taking it upon themselves. They get a lot of bad mouthing about being slackers and that sort of things, but what they're doing is very impressive as a generation, and that includes saving. How they're investing, that's a different question, Milan, and you're absolutely right. Will they produce the results that they need in order to retire? And that's an open question. But the fact is, you've got to start by saving.
Well, that's true. Without saving, nothing else matters, And we talk about the 6 habits that highly successful investors have. And the first one is save. Without it, the other 5 don't matter. And Americans have, and probably Canadians too, although I haven't been able to find that out, I haven't looked really. But Americans have saved more money than ever before because they want to retire early. And based on history, they will invest it poorly. Most investors are losers. Most investors cannot equal the American market, which has produced the best results compared to other investments in over 100 years. The best results, unless you cherry pick. Yes, you can find stamps that have done better than the US market. and you can find violin bows, and you can find coins, and you can find real estate, and you can find many other sources of investing that have done better than the U.S. market. But unless you cherry pick, generally speaking, nothing has equaled the American market in more than 100 years, probably close to 200 years. So, Confucius said, study the past if you will define the future. And so the thing to do is invest in the American market. Most investors trail the market because they behave the way that Wall Street wants them to behave. They trade when they shouldn't, and they pick individual stocks, which they shouldn't. And so they need to have an asset allocation which would provide them good results. That has been shown to be more useful than anything else. If you have an asset allocation where you have roughly 50% of your investments in cash or near cash and 50% in the market itself, that's a wonderful asset allocation that works for most people. And 40-60 also works, and 45-55 also works, and 55-45. All of them work so long as you stick with them and pay attention to saving. That's the number one. Number two is do it yourself. Do it yourself. Number three is buy the American market as a whole. No picking stocks. Number four is buy and hold. Don't trade. Number five is actually an adjustment to number four, which is go back to your asset allocation when market movement throws it off. And number six is avoid complexity. If you have an investment that you cannot explain to a 10-year-old, don't get into it. And it's as simple as that, equaling the American market, which is the best performance record of any investment, unless you cherry pick. And the American market has given investors a little over 6%, 6.25%, I think, inflation adjusted for over 100 years, close to 200 years. And that's the place to be. And it's such an easy thing to do. And most investors don't do it. Most investors do badly because they behave the way that Wall Street wants them to behave.
Well, Milan, I've got something that I'm keeping my eye on, and I don't think I can explain it to a 10-year-old. Let me explain it as best I can. I think there's a huge rise in stocks that are related to AI, also to chip making, and there's something that is specific to chip making. It might be a little bit complicated for a 10-year-old, but it's application-specific circuitry. It's integrated circuits that are specifically designed for a specific application. Now, Amazon and Google are working with companies like Marvell and Intel to provide those types of things. Those circuits are, the idea is to be able to create them quickly and cheaply, and to solve a particular business problem. And these companies that are doing well in this area are projected to get revenue in the billions in the next couple of years. So this is something that I think is a little bit complicated to explain, but if you understand it, you understand the drive of the market and where people are putting their money, where these companies are investing, where the Googles are putting their money, where the Amazons are putting their money. They're investing in these circuit boards that are designed specifically for their purposes, rather than general use circuitry. And I think that the companies that are backing that now have caught my eye, and I've invested in a couple of them. One is Marvell, MRVL, and the other, in this one is, I've only dipped my toe in this one because I'm just tracking it. I'm curious to see if Intel can reinvent itself. ADM pretty much ate Intel's lunch, and Intel is trying to reinvent itself in this specific area. And if they can pull it off, their revenues will go up and their stock price will go up.
History shows, James, that picking individual stocks is a losing proposition. Doesn't matter how well they do in the short term. We should be investing in the long term, and long term means 10 years. And history shows that picking individual stocks has not worked in the past and probably will not work in the future. Very likely will not. Occasionally it will, but for most investors it will not work. So, for instance, I don't know whether you keep records that allow you to take a look at how you did over over the last 10 years.
Mhm.
But if you do, you did not do as well as the market, almost for sure. There's some exceptions, but almost for sure. Yeah, Mark wants to say something important, so go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
No, I just had a quick question for you, and this is actually for you as well as Sasha and even Milan and everybody. But y'all kind of alluded to it with what's going on in Canada. But how important pay attention to the in the international politics that are going on? Because one of the things that I was doing while y'all were talking is I was reading, and I saw that South Africa, apparently the rand is down. And their central bank said on Wednesday, which is today, that they are expecting their country system to remain resilient despite risks from worldwide elections, persistent geopolitical tensions, and weak domestic market conditions because their political leaders, the ANC, just recently lost their election. I think that Modi in India is getting ready to build a coalition government as well. And then even in Argentina, apparently there's a rise in poverty, and there's a lot of people that are in poverty in Argentina. And I think that those numbers are high even in some of the big cities and all along those lines. So just wondering how important as an investor should you pay attention if you, because Pod TV claims to be a global network, to be engaged in your country politics and how it might be impacting your investments. Y'all's thoughts on that?
You
Because I
could
did see that.
And Mexico's election too was very recent.
Mexico, absolutely. Mexico just elected its first woman leader, and women have done better than men pretty well most of the time. The first woman leader, interestingly, happens to be Jewish at the same time. Not that it matters, except Jewish people happen to be very smart. You know, if you take a look at the number of Nobel Prizes won by Jews, it's well above that 10%, and they make up almost 0% of the global population. So, you know,
Small correction. It's not 10%, it's 27%. However,
what's 27?
it's not 10% of
Nobel
Nobel Prize winners Jews won, but 27%.
Oh, 27%. Wow.
27% of Nobel Prize winners were Jews.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
you
amazing.
know, and why is that? That's because they're people of the book. They're
But
people of the book.
let's talk about what Mark raised. The internet, the international community does affect investing. There's no question about it. For example, what's going on in Israel and Gaza has affected the shipping distribution patterns, and it's made it more expensive. So that's a direct cost to the consumers. So these things have to be tracked, and I think you have to think of only locally. You're going to miss the big picture of what's going on in the world. For example, you know, the CHIP Act passed in the Biden administration was to bring chips back into the United States, so manufacturing would occur at home, so you wouldn't have to rely on allies because of political distance, you know, because of the possibility of wars, because of outside interference with the delivery systems. Right now, we have a global economy, but we don't have a global community. So we're still working against one another instead of with one another far too often. And this jeopardizes some of our investments, and we have to be aware of it.
Well,
Just a lot of those.
wars are very profitable. Unless a war is fought in your country, wars are very profitable. All those people making the tanks and the bullets and the airplanes and all that, it adds up to a lot of money, a lot of occupation, lots of jobs created, and a lot of wealth created by countries who are not directly involved in that war. That is, the war is not being fought on their land. It's being fought somewhere else. We want wars if we want wealth. Yeah.
And I've heard that before. I've heard that people say that war has been used even in the middle of depressions and as a way to get out of depressions and even recessions and all along those lines. But even when I was thinking about the article I was reading on Argentina, they were talking about how their new libertarian government has got this tough medical reforms, and apparently that's squeezing the pensions, the state salaries, and pushing up the rental prices, because apparently they have more people, including in some of their major cities, that are in living on the streets, and they've even got people out there that are trying to find ways to relieve that situation, because it seems like that has been going up in massive numbers. I mean, one of the numbers I saw said that there were literally about 4,900 people in April sleeping on the streets of Buenos Aires, which is a major city, and that's up from 35. That's up from 3,511 a year prior, and it's even similar in other urban cities like Cordoba and Rosero. So I'm thinking that that's going to impact their president to try to do things with the state purse, and that could cost their economy, because definitely it seems like he's trying to do some restrictive kind of measures that can help his economy, and who knows what impact they'll have on the world economy. But any thoughts on that? Because we even had those issues with rising home prices. You alluded to that earlier, Milan, here in the States, and it's apparently impacting the rest of the world as well.
You know, sleeping on the streets in Ottawa, Canada, is really shameful. People from all over the world come to Ottawa when they need to make political visits. They come head for Ottawa, and there are people sleeping on the streets. That should not be allowed. There has to be some way of dealing with that issue. And I don't know what the answers are. Certainly, it shouldn't be necessary for those people to sleep on the streets in one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. The same is true in Washington, D.C. People sleeping on the streets in the wealthiest community on the planet anywhere. What can we do about that? I had a meeting with a colleague of mine who is a dental surgeon, oral surgeon in Barbados, and he was responsible for housing for quite a while. And he said people sleeping on the streets because they're unwell, they're not mentally in good form. It's a very small number. Most of them sleep on the streets because they don't want to follow the rules. So we should be able to do something about that, because certainly it's shameful that a place like Washington, like Ottawa, have people sleeping on the streets. They don't in Moscow. Nobody in Moscow sleeps on the streets. Do they, Sasha?
No, they take them in the police for 2 weeks. And therefore, you're right. There are no people sleeping on the streets of Moscow. They're sleeping in jails. Maybe jails are even safer places, because they have some 200 grams of bread a day and some tea. Maybe it's safer. By the way, in Toronto, a lot of homeless people, they are sleeping on the streets, and they don't want to go to any shelters or anywhere. They just feel happy. They feel free. They have everything what they need. They have access to places where they can take showers and so on. And that's how it is. They don't want to go to shelters.
You're saying we will always have people sleeping on the streets unless, like in Russia, they put them in jail.
Yeah, so if you will do the same thing here or United States, there will be no people on the street sleeping, for sure.
Hey, Sasha, I did see some scary news, particularly for you and Milan and others that are in the financial advice space and everything. Plus, there is this kind of device that a lot of people go to and they are fans of, namely the phone and the computer and everything. And there is a business that is part of that apparently has become the go-to place, which shows that people need to be watching this show and not necessarily doing what I'm going to say, because apparently there are some reports, because I saw the article that came out of Cleveland and some other places, that's saying that TikTok is becoming the go-to place for financial advice. So I guess people are going to TikTok because they want to get advice on financial affairs, and I don't even know that the TikTokers know what they're doing. And even I recently saw, even though he tried to ban it, that the former president is on TikTok now as well. So I know that I probably could pull up my phone and probably could find some people that are trying
I've discovered
advice and making little cute TikTok videos.
Mark, I discovered very interesting. I didn't follow TikTok, but I did follow Reddit and a few other sites for picking stocks and stock advices and the discussions and all that stuff. And it was very interesting that on Reddit, I got into a thread 3 months old. So we're talking about February, March of this year. And there was a discussion, almost endless discussion, how to short NVIDIA. And one guy said, oh, I just shorted 200 shares and $960. No, I did even better. I shorted at $265. I shorted 200 and I will short another 200 if it will go to $980. Then I've looked at what is a short position on NVIDIA. It's over 24 million shares are being shorted. So today, NVIDIA decisively crossed 1,200 level.
Yes.
Around 1207, I did one transaction. I sold 100 shares and closed the covered calls. Um, why I did that is because the next two couple of days there will be inflation report, there will be reports, this and that, and the Nasdaq may go down probably 3-4%, and Nvidia probably will go down to 1150, 1140, maybe I'm wrong. Because so far, NVIDIA defies any reports and anything. It's almost like we live in separate universe. Here is the Federal Reserve and S&P 500 and all other legitimate situations. By the way, Milan, I don't understand one thing. If you can teach 10 years old to buy and sell S&P 500, you can do probably at the same time teach them how to buy and sell NVIDIA, or is it more complicated?
You don't buy derivatives.
There is no derivative. I'm talking about stock, NVIDIA itself.
Yeah, you can teach them how to buy NVIDIA. They will, in the long run, they will lose. Absolutely.
No, not for a long run, for half an hour. If you buy in the morning, for half an hour, you buy in the morning at 11.75 and sell it half an hour later for 12.
So shorting a stock is one of the few ways that you can lose more than 100% of your money. There are very few places that you can lose more than 100% of what you put in, but shorting a stock is one of those.
Well, those people on Reddit, obviously, they're candidates for driving Uber in the foreseeable future if they don't drive already. Because it's painful. If you sell short 200 shares at 960 and another 200 at 980, okay.
Yeah, cover.
Average. And stock is now over 1200. You can count how much money. It's bleeding. It's nothing but bleeding. So but there are people who, now if they could short at 960, they for sure will short now at 12.05, 12.10, 12.80, 13.55, and 14. So, plus, see, once it will split on Friday, that stock will go to 200 instantly. We're not talking about the end of the year. I'm talking about probably by August, September, the latest.
Yeah, people sometimes believe that what goes up must come down. And that isn't true in stocks, certainly in the short term. And when you're covering calls and shorting positions and stuff like that, you're dealing in the short term. And it to me, I just don't understand why people would be falling into running against the current. The current is going one direction. Why are you trying to swim upstream? It doesn't make sense to me that people would be fighting the tape. And there's a certain momentum that happens. There's a certain amount of piling on. People just say, well, I want to get part of it. I want to be able to say I own NVIDIA. And there's a lot of but the fundamentals have not changed. Now, many companies are targeting NVIDIA, and right now they're trying to get the market share that NVIDIA has. Now, will this be the same in 5 years? Almost certainly not. But in the near-term future, there's no question that NVIDIA still has the lion's share of a very lucrative market. Betting against it makes no sense to me.
And, interestingly enough, I noticed that almost all leading U.S. companies like Microsoft and almost just anyone, they're all acquiring NVIDIA products. And even Elon Musk acquired very substantial, I think 500 units. And he directed, instead of Tesla, he now notified NVIDIA that he wants to deliver that to X and XA, I think. So the Tesla itself will sooner or later will buy. Maybe they are waiting for this newer chip. So maybe,
yes.
But I mean, they have so many orders, they hardly can comply with orders. Any innovation in that space, NVIDIA is right there as number one. anywhere across the board.
Because Sasha, won't they need the chip? Because one of the things that just happened here in actually with the city I'm in, Durham, is that they just recently spent a bunch of millions of dollars to bring a charging station down here and to build a large charging station that is one of the EV stations. I've got the name of it. I think it's Kim Power is the folks that are coming that are the charging station manufacturers and everything. And I'm thinking that they will probably have to use an NVIDIA chip in order to even create the charging stations that they will be building. Because apparently Kim Power, and I think that they are traded on the U.S. stock market, is who is coming to this area and everything. And they are a manufacturer of those charging stations. So I'm thinking that they will need that NVIDIA chip in order to even build the EVs, and maybe that's why Elon Musk is interested in everything. But I did have a quick question because I kind of alluded to you about it on Monday's World Edition, and this is for Milan. Milan, what do you say when, because one of the things that people do when they look at the stocks, even those that are not as engaged as you three gentlemen are, is when there is a calamity. And one of the things that happened is that while you are a big proponent of the S&P and all along those lines, there was this whole notion, and I think Jim used to work for them, Berkshire Hathaway had a major miscalculation, and a lot of people took that as a sign of there being a issue with the S&P when that took place. I think it was on Monday and everything. So just wondering your reaction when there is something like that that happens from a financial standpoint, because some people were very...
Well, okay, a couple of things. I'm wearing a Serbian hat here because I was born in Belgrade. Serbian parents, I'm wearing a Serbian hat. And many people don't know that Nikola Tesla was a Serbian. So
Exactly.
people should know that. Now, the answer to your question is I don't know the answer. I haven't studied it well enough.
Well, I have an answer, and it's not necessarily a good one, but the idea of calamity. I usually look at that as a buying opportunity.
Right.
And when things happen in the world, and they always will, they always have. If stock prices get down, I look at the fundamentals. Are they going to go back? Are they going, or have they reduced their revenues? If they've been harmed in some way that their revenues are reduced, stay away from them. But if they haven't been, their revenues are still solid, the stock price will come back, and I consider it a buying opportunity because it's now cheaper than it used to be.
No, many stocks don't come back, though, Sasha. The American market as a whole does and will, as it has in the past. And someday, empires have 100% failure rate, but the failure of the American market is nowhere visible yet anywhere. And
get the Fed to reduce interest rates, and we'll be fine. No, I agree. All of the numbers support the U.S. economy is doing extremely well.
Yeah.
The unemployment is low. The inflation has come down. Corporates are producing record earnings. Corporations are producing record earnings. And, all of these numbers add up to a robust economy, not an overheated economy, but one that's doing very well. Now, there has been some reports of manufacturing slowdowns, and this is kind of thing that the Fed might take into account when they consider reducing rates. And so I think that that's good news. But, I don't want people out of work. If it takes the people being unemployed in order for them to lower the interest rates, there's something wrong with their reasoning. We want people to have jobs. Wages have gone up. Inflation has come down.
The unemployment rate came down. It seems to me that Republicans are very skillful of manipulating data and trying to convince people that the economy is doing very bad, that it's a Biden's fault, that people are struggling. This is incredible, and I think probably the Democrats are waiting for their turn to show people, to open their eyes. They're not doing it now because there's still enough time before the election.
Yeah, don't wait too long, though.
Yeah, but I think by the end of summer, once you see, there's a very important point whether Trump will be elected nominee for the Republican Party. My theory is that the only reason why the Republicans, and there are some smart people for sure, why they're clinging up to Trump is because he is a very good fundraiser. And they understand that he alone can raise more money than all of them together. So I think they will keep Trump going and raise more money. Do it, Donald, you're terrific. Do it, great. Now, on the convention that they will have in Milwaukee, they will tell Trump, look, buddy, enough is enough. Thank you very much. Go back to your jail and let us elect uh, the opponent for Democrats who has good chances to win, who hasn't been convicted felon, who can put the program together, and they will throw him under the bus. They're just too clever to go an election with convicted felon.
But speaking of being clever and everything, have you looked? And I don't know how it is over there in the West Coast, and I don't know how much you and Milan are paying attention, but I do pay attention to the ads, and the ads are generally doing what you are saying because they're right now. Biden is releasing a lot of ads that are basically saying that if Trump is elected, he's coming after your pension, he's coming after your medicine, he's coming after a number of other things, and yes, they are definitely trying to paint the felon tag on him as well. But yes, the ads definitely seem to be looking at the economy and trying to target the economy as a reason to not vote for former President Trump. So I've seen at least 3 or 4 ads that way here in the North Carolina market, and I'm sure you've seen similar ones there on the West Coast, Jim, and everything. And so definitely they seem to be targeting this notion that the economy is doing better than you are being told it is, and also this is what you face if he is elected. So I have seen a number of
Isn't
those.
it amazing? Isn't it amazing that a man who has been convicted of all these crimes that he's been convicted of has such a large following? He's offended all the women. He's offended all the military people. He's offended large groups of people. Yet he has a very large following. And I don't know. I saw an article not that long ago showing that if an election were held in the United States today, Trump would win.
I doubt it. Because nobody is taking into consideration. See, you have to trust to American people. The election will be decided in 6 states. A lot of independents there, they're not deaf. The literate people, they're following at least somewhat the news. So
And
how
49% of the independents, Sasha, have said that Trump should not run, let alone that they won't vote for him.
Absolutely.
Drop out.
So that will decide. You know what I see as one of the outcome, maybe it's 10%, a little bit more, but in my opinion, there is very possible outcome of the election that Republicans will lose presidency, the House, the Senate, and most of the governors. And basically, they will have to, I don't know, either to start a new party or rebuild it from the zero. They have to come up with the program. Right now, they don't have program. They're just working on negativity that, look, Biden's economy will kill you, or they're now going after Fauci to prove that the COVID, it was a democratic invention and so on, and there's so many people who have died or so on. So they're working from the position of fear. They're selling fear. There is nothing, not substance of what are they offering? Even the border. Okay, so Biden yesterday came up with the border is now being effectively closed with Mexico as of yesterday midnight. So I don't understand. On abortion, they will lose decisively.
Absolutely.
What will make the Republicans win? Never mind presidency, but even the Senate or House or just governorships. How are they going to do it? I don't understand.
Well, there's been a hard right turn throughout many countries in Europe, in the United States. There's and part of it, essentially, it's all based on fear. A lot of it is based on immigration and people coming over and changing the way of our lives and blah blah blah. But it used to be someone would say like Trump has said, they're coming and they're poisoning our blood. That was the kind of thing that was suicidal to say. That was touching the third rail. You can't say things like that. Trump seems to get away with it. People seem to forgive anything that he does. And I'm not talking about the majority of people, but I'm saying, at least 1/3 of the country, probably around 40% of the country, has given him a free pass to do and say whatever he wants. And, So it's time for the American citizens to rise up and say enough is enough. We have values in this country. This guy has no character, no values, and it's time for us to put our support behind someone who shares the common values, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness this country was founded on. And Trump, it represents a dire danger to democracy. The first thing he would do would be to declare martial law and close the border. And once you declare martial law, then you don't have to follow the Constitution and things like messy things like that. And the next thing would be he would go after illegals that are in the country, which means they have to require documentation. That means you have to have papers. People will have to have papers. And when they sign up to get the papers that allows them to be full American citizens, then, you might have to take an oath of loyalty. Where this stuff ends, we've seen it in history before, and people don't think it can happen here. It can happen here. Trump is a real and present danger.
Absolutely agree with you, Jim. It's a very difficult time for America until election, because indeed the victory of Trump, which I don't believe, I don't give even 1% that he would win, but it's still a possibility. He will. He said that on the first day he will become dictator. He will go with a vengeance against anybody who had to do with his conviction. So he will destroy judicial system. He won't even need Supreme Court, although Supreme Court supports him, but he won't even need it. He won't need anything. Remember what he did in his first presidency when he fired generals, he fired all his advisors. If you will look, I saw a very interesting map of 2016, 2020, all his advisors on the first term, all of them were convicted criminals.
Yeah.
All of them. So basically, everything what Trump doing is a criminal enterprise.
The whole Trump organization, the Trump University, the Trump organization, they've all been found guilty of fraud. They've all been found guilty and fined. And this is a pattern, a repeated pattern of deception. And, the guy nothing seems to stick to him. Even though all of these things have been proven in courts. Juries have decided this. Judges have decided this. He's guilty, guilty, guilty. The guy's a loser. What's worse is he's a bad loser.
I was speaking with a cousin yesterday. I was speaking with a cousin in Belgrade yesterday, and I said to him, we don't understand why Serbians support Trump and support Russia. And he said, we don't understand you either.
I know. That's true. I have one Serbian friend, communicate with him sometimes, and he's also pro-Russia and pro-Trump and so on. And I ask him, so if you'll take a balance sheet, and on the left you will write the positives of supporting Putin, Trump, etc., and there you put negatives by sticking with Putin, Trump, or so on. How would it look to you? What positives you find to supporting this? One is a world criminal, another one U.S. convicted felon.
And what did he say? What did you say?
He was trying to wiggle that, 25 years ago, U.S. bombed Serbia, which is right.
It's difficult to have a rational discussion about these things.
It's horrible. Yes, it happened. I agree with him. But other than that, all this propaganda of Putin and Trump and what Serbia, how can they benefit from it? I really fail to see. Milan, you think?
Well, this Serbian war that you were talking about, Sasha, was the first time in history that a warring party did not lose a single soldier. That puts a different perspective on fighting wars. If you can fight a war and not lose a single soldier, then it makes a lot of economic sense to have wars happening all the time. Not in your country, but if you're not going to lose a single soldier, fight wars because they create a lot of wealth.
I don't know how Russia creates wealth by getting their 500,000 people dead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the other thing is that it's all based on fear. Most of this propaganda is based on fear. And what they want is a strong leader. And Putin is perceived as a strong leader. Trump is perceived by many as a strong leader. That's because he gets up there and says whatever pops into his head. and it doesn't matter if it's true or not, and people aren't fact checking him. The guy lies constantly. He's a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between what he's saying when he's lying and when he's telling the truth. He's incapable of making those differentiations. So what we have is people that believe that he's telling it like it is, that he's a tough guy and he's going to shake things up. And, they're susceptible to that because they're afraid. Now, how do you make them feel safe? How do you make them feel secure? That's when you get the best angels of the American people, any people, when they feel safe and secure. Once you do that, then they won't be so susceptible to the con artists, such as Donald Trump.
But Jim, there was a former president that had a nickname that a lot of people would say that Trump might do an even better job of that and everything, because as one that was starting to really follow the presidencies in the early 80s, there was a gentleman by the name of Reagan, and I remember his nickname was Teflon Ron and everything, because you would say that he literally could have things that would bounce off of him, and it seems like Donald Trump may make Teflon Ron look mild in the sense of how much Teflon he has and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because I do.
Ronald Reagan was at least likable. The man was a likable human being. He wasn't a bad person. Trump is a bad person. He's a failed human being.
Reagan entered office popular, and he left office even more popular. That's never been that has never happened before.
And Mark, I don't recall that Reagan was convicted felon.
No,
definitely not. I mean, there might have been some people that were upset at him over some different things that he did when he was governor of California, which Jim could allude to and everything. But no, he did not get a conviction, even though there might have been some people that thought he should have been convicted on some things, but he was never convicted of anything. So that is very true, no matter what people may have thought of him, because I do know some people that did not like certain policies, particularly around criminal justice and other things, but he never got convicted the way that former President Trump has now been of some 36 counts or something like that.
We forget that in the second administration, Reagan was clearly suffering from dementia. Very soon afterwards, they just protected him. They didn't let him talk in crowds. So what you need in an administration is professionals around you. And when you're going to elect someone like Trump, he's going to bring in loyalists. He's going to bring in yes men. He's not going to bring in professionals.
He will bring a lot of criminals with him. But
he will bring in more criminals. Absolutely.
I'd like to mention something about Reagan. Remember Iran-Contra affair, where he had to testify for Congress and so on. Remember that Trump didn't testify even in his own trials, civil trials, criminal trials. He wouldn't testify. What can you say about the man who cannot even testify for himself?
Well, he has every right not to testify, but the fact is the lawyers didn't want him to. His lawyers knew that he would blow it.
That would be disaster. But he still wouldn't be convicted of more than 34 felonies. It still would go on the 34, so he wouldn't make any worse.
And there are also 10 contempt of court rulings against him. So he's fined, and the judge was saying, I don't want to throw you in jail. But he couldn't control himself. He couldn't stop, throwing shade at the judge, the judge's daughters, the jurors, the system. He's breaking down the confidence in the judicial system. Judicial system is not perfect, but it's a great system compared to what other kinds of justice you could get in the rest of the world. And it's right more often than it's wrong. And you got to have your president supporting it. Otherwise, all of it breaks down. And this is another clear and present danger represented by Donald Trump. The breakdown of all of our institutions, including our justice.
People are concerned about Biden's age, aren't they?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and so he is, I think, the oldest president that the United States has ever seen, and so people are concerned about that. And he has made some slips, speaking. Which people attribute to his age.
Oh, he did that when he was 40.
There are not too many of them, by the way. I'm listening to his speeches usually.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job.
Too many. Yes, there are one or two here and there. So Republican.
You'll see it played over and over. Yeah.
the media will overplay over and over the same thing and so on. Look, this is very pity, and I don't think they will get any mileage out of it at the end of
Have
the
you
day.
listened to a Trump speech recently? The man is incoherent.
He was always incoherent. He is not a speaker at all. I'm looking forward to the debates on 27th of June. I'm surprised actually that Biden didn't cancel it, because why a convicted felon should be on the same stage as the president of the United States of America? I see no logic in it, but maybe Biden wants to drive his point that, look, you're a convicted felon. What are you doing here? Go back to your jail quickly.
If they awarded Academy Awards for liars, Trump would be a winner, wouldn't he?
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing is that his crowd around him in 2016, there were multiple convictions.
Yeah.
Crowd around him in 2020, multiple convictions. These are lawyers that have been convicted. They've lost their licenses to practice.
All of them. Yeah.
You know, he surrounded himself with people, and then some of them, like Roger Stone, he pardoned, so they didn't suffer the consequences, but they were convicted, and you know they did crimes. So if you surround yourself with crimes, your Trump organization has a history of tax fraud. You know, different types of business records that were altered improperly.
The fact that he's a rapist, he was found a rapist.
And he was also guilty of sexual abuse. He was found guilty, and then he got a $5 million defamation suit because he was bad-mouthing the person he was found guilty of abusing. And then he couldn't keep his mouth shut, and it ended up being an $84 million defamation suit. So the guy doesn't have any self-control. Do you want that guy having power over our nuclear weapons?
Well,
So many self-control.
James, so many people do. He has an enormous amount of support. Trump, doesn't
I don't believe so. No, he has his base. We're talking about 33% of Republicans who are supporting him. If you take overall, 33% will shrink to 15%, 16% or so. And that's with 16%. Can you win presidency? Absolutely no. It's never happened in history.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, I thank you very much for a very interesting discussion, including political part of it. And have a good luck in trading, and see you next week, same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.